Another month, another fusion. Such is the way Raid turns. Hello everyone, Bront CatHerder here, and we're having fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and it is indeed that time of the month to get a new fusion. We have a patch coming up on this coming Thursday. Lots of good stuff coming with that patch. In addition to that, we're going to get the Incarnate, who is a High Elf Legendary Champion, defense-based force. It's got an interesting kit. I'm not sure how sold I am on it. We'll go over it, we'll take a look at it, and we'll see if this is something that could possibly help your account, where this champion could be useful, and if this champion is worth going for. All right, so first we're going to take a look at the kit here. I know some of the content creators have a little write-up from Polarium. I don't have that. I am not an official raid content creator at the moment. I hope to be getting in soon. It definitely can be helped with your support. So if you guys want to help me get into that content creator program or just help me out in general, hit the subscribe button, go smash that. I definitely appreciate that. Like the video if you get a chance to like the video. It all helps me out with the algorithm. I definitely appreciate you guys, and hopefully this will be useful information for you. So first, the Attack Intruder ability, the A1, is a 2-hitter, attacks twice. Each hit is a 30% chance, bookable to 50, of a provoke for 1 turn. It's an okay ability. It does have, however, a 10% chance of counterattacking when an ally arbiter is hit, occurs once per hit. I believe that actually can get buffed up to 30% if I'm reading that properly. Maybe not. I'm not 100% sure. That's actually worth asking. But even at 30%, it's just kind of there. We just had the Wixwell fusion. Wixwell does this a little bit better at a 60% chance instead of a 50. It's not a bad A1. It has some use in Arena. It has some use in PvE content as well. It has some use in Hydra, but it's not a game changer, amazing A1 in and of itself. But, you know, there's very few champions that have game-changing, amazing A1, so that's fine. So we go to the A2, Formation Phalanx. 4-turn, bookable down to 3, has a 75% chance of removing all shield buffs and 1 random buff from all enemies, bookable to 100%. It does, however, attack first. That means you can weak hit with this. I'm actually kind of curious if it will remove the shields after she does damage or before she does damage. And if it doesn't remove it before she does damage, I kind of wonder why, because that doesn't make a lot of sense. After places a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns. This shield is proportional to the champion's defense. Now, Wixwell is a defense champion with shields. He does a really high shield. Helicath does a really good shield. He's another defense-based shield. Valkyrie's got some of the best shields in the game, but she has some of the best defense in the game. Overall, defense-based shields tend to be good, so her shield should be somewhat sizable, hopefully at least. So she attacks, removes some buffs and shields, and then places a shield buff on everybody for 2 turns. Not a bad ability, not the best ability either, but there's some uses for that in the game, and it definitely will help you tank when you need the tanking. The A3, Defensive Measures, places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns, and then places a strengthen buff on all allies for 2 turns. So this means that she is not an effective mischief tank because you need more buffs than your allies, and she actually has less buffs than her allies. So if you're thinking about a mischief tank possibility, she's not going to be a mischief tank for you. Ally protection is one of the best defensive buffs in the game, though. It really helps spread the damage around, and then on top of that, being a defense-based champion, she's going to have high defense, so she's going to take less damage overall from the ally protection. This does mean, however, that you're going to struggle to build her for damage, because if you build her for damage, the ally protection will kill her, because if you are not aware, ally protection damage, it gets based off of your crit damage percentage. So having a higher crit damage on an ally protector means you will take more damage when you get attacked. However, that is not an issue if you're using her in Clan Boss, for example, which is where this ability would be great. In Clan Boss, the scaling up of the Clan Boss's damage does not scale up properly with the ally protection. So you can build for the crit damage. As the Clan Boss's damage scales up, the ally protection doesn't need to scale up. So that's why ally protection is great in Clan Boss. With a shield and with ally protection, she can be a very, very good clan boss champion. The strengthen will help quite a bit as well, reduce the damage that everyone else takes, and reduce her damage and the ally protection as well. Shields are very helpful as well, plus it does some damage. The A1 provoke, not so much for clan boss. But overall, actually, it looks like it would be a very good clan boss champion for a lot of people if you're building an ally protection clan boss team. So if you're early progressing, clan boss looks to be a good place for her. And just looking at that kit from here, this champion is very good for early game progression and early game clan boss. But there's more to her kit, so let's take a look at this. Crisis Response is a 4-turn cooldown passive, increases this champion's accuracy by 20% for each ally under an ally protection buff. Now that is any ally protection buff. So a double ally protection team in Clan Boss, she'll get this on everybody, including herself, so she can get up to 5 of those buffs. So that's 100 extra accuracy. That's actually pretty good. It makes her really easy to build early on. Late game, I don't know where that actually becomes a big deal, but early on could be very helpful. When killed, resets the cooldown of Destiny's Call for an ally arbiter. If there are multiple champions of this team, it will only affect one active one once. That's the 4-turn cooldown is on that particular ability. It's okay. It makes her possibly useful in Arena, but her kit doesn't really scream Arena. The provoke can kind of help in Arena. The stripping of shields can kind of help in Arena. But ally protection is not great in Arena for a go first team with an arbiter most of the time. Not seeing that as a big Arena thing. Now that said, early game accounts, again, once you get your arbiter, she'll be a great pair for arbiter. And let's go take a look at the final passive there. Final passive, increase this champion's resistance by 20 for each ally under an ally protection. Very similar to the accuracy that she gets. And that's, again, she doesn't have to own that ally protection, so that's useful. This champion will also receive 20% of the damage of any ally arbiters. If there are multiple champions in this team, the skill effect will only activate once. So she'll actually take some additional damage from an arbiter being hit. Very much like an Osurga or Bulwark or something along those lines. It helps if you're worried about your arbiter dying, but overall, it's probably not a major issue other than it will keep your arbiter alive a little bit. However, the second part of this, if an ally arbiter is about to get killed by a fatal hit, places an unkillable buff on her for 1 turn. If there are multiple champions of this skill, it doesn't affect anybody, it only affects 1. 4-turn cooldown on that as well, so you're not going to have that up all the time, and it does not book, but it basically gives your arbiter an unkillable, very much like a Leorius passive, very much like having Swift Parry, very much like a Skull Crown. A decent ability, very useful in Arena to keep an arbiter alive, and keeping an arbiter alive is great because arbiter can revive your team. So it's got some decent use. The problem is that if you're building a pure speed team for getting into higher level Arena, she doesn't really fit into that meta. The shields, okay, she can strip the shields and be a possible setup champion, so that's not bad. Okay, the ally protection can be good if you're doing a go second team, but go second teams aren't really the point of an arbiter. Provokes can be helpful, but in high-end Arena, provoke is going to get you sheeped. So where is she useful? I mentioned early game accounts in Clan Boss. She's going to be godsend in Clan Boss for early game accounts. For accounts that are looking to progress through the game, even unbooked, she's got a decent shield. Ally protection can do a ton of work as far as keeping your team alive. The provokes can certainly help target you as well. And Arbiter is a champion that, is something that you can get fairly early on in your raid career. So you'll eventually have an Arbiter, and you might run Arbiter in PvE stuff. Arbiter's got a very good kit. And this will also help in faction wars, specifically when you're dealing with Arbiter. She could be a godsend for keeping you alive against the bosses, and overall a very, very good champion for some progression. What I haven't mentioned is high-end. She doesn't really have a great place in Hydra if you're doing Hydra beyond normal or maybe even hard. Yes, she's got the A1 provoke. That A1 provoke could be useful for accounts that are progressing in Hydra, but overall her kit really doesn't scream great in Hydra. Shields are shields, but the Hydra doesn't get a shield, so removing those aren't great. The removing a random buff could be helpful in Hydra. It's not a bad ability in Hydra, but it's one random buff, so it's not going to change how a Hydra works. You're going to have trouble building her for damage because of the way ally protection works. So you're either going to have to not use her ally protection or not build her for a lot of damage. She's already kind of stat hungry with needing both high defense, and then you're also going to need the accuracy to be able to do the stripping and the provoking. So if you're also building damage, then you need crit rate and crit damage. So early on, that's going to be a struggle to deal with. She does have the passives that help her with the resistance and help her with her accuracy, but they rely on having ally protection out there. And what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to provoke to fail because you didn't have all the ally protections out there as well. So it's usable early on. It's definitely useful for early progression. It is probably not something you want to rely on for a middle to late game account. So is this a champion worth going for? If you're an early game account that has the resources to possibly go for her, yes. If you're a mid game account and you have the resources, yes, probably a good champion to go for, could be helpful. If you're a late game account, I generally recommend going for them if you can afford to anyway, because I think that you never know if you're going to miss out on champion that's going to have some sort of hidden feature in them. And in fact, the way that this kit reads, it reads to me like a kit from some kind of game mode we don't have yet, where maybe it's a faction war, literally, where you're forced to use high elves against some other content, for example. If you're forced to use high elves against some other content, Arbiter in PvE makes a lot more sense. Suddenly, the Incarnate makes a lot more sense as well. But are you going to find her in high game arena? No. Are you going to find her in high end Hydra? No. So should you do this fusion? It really depends. I don't like skipping fusions when you can avoid it, but at the same time, I understand if you're struggling for resources, this is a fusion that doesn't do a lot right now. It doesn't seem to have a huge place in the game, where if you don't need an ally protector for clan boss, and you don't need somebody with shields, then you probably don't need this champion. So maybe you skip a fusion, take it off, build up some resources, save them up, maybe even go for the epics. I don't know what the epics are going to be at the moment. It is going to be a hybrid fusion, so it is most likely going to be fragments for epics, and then epics are trained up to be able to build the legendary. Those can be tough, although they've increased enough of how the tavern works to make it a lot easier to deal with the tavern. Plus, you can often work with champion training events to get champion training points for training up some of these epics as well. So you can definitely make efficient use of this. But I don't think this is a champion that you want to break the bank for. This is not one you would spend for. This is not one that you would expend all of your resources for. If you can do the fusion, that's great. And I highly recommend, even if you don't think you're going to do the fusion, follow along with the events until it becomes a point where you have to spend a resource you don't know if you want to spend, and then think it over. I don't think she's a game breaker. I also don't think that she's a horrible champion. She's got a very average kit. Nothing stands out that makes her say, you need her in this particular content. Champions like that can be helpful for progression. Champions like that are not account making, account breaking. So do with that what you will. Hopefully, if you want to get her, you get a chance to get her. And hopefully this has been helpful in teaching you why you may want to look at the champion or may not look at the champion. So until next time, I'm Bront CatHerder.